Emma lived in a fairy tale with Liam, but everything changed when he vanished without a trace. What seemed like an irreparable tragedy uncovered dark secrets and a devastating betrayal. 6 years later, at a gala event, Emma crosses paths with the man who abandoned her, only to find that he now lives a life of luxury and lies. Get ready for the story of a woman who turned her pain into a fight for justice and rebuilt her life with courage and determination. In the small town of Millstone, mornings began with the sound of tools in Liam's makeshift workshop and the aroma of coffee lovingly brewed by Emma. They were the epitome of a simple, happy life, living in a modest house surrounded by a garden that reflected the care they had for each other. Emma, a local schoolteacher, was passionate about literature and always carried books that inspired her students. Liam, with his natural talent for carpentry, dreamed of opening his own workshop and turning his craft into a sustainable business. Together, they seemed to have found the perfect balance between love, work, and shared dreams. When Emma discovered she was pregnant, it was as if the world had gained new colors. The news filled their home with a special glow, and Liam was overjoyed. His first reaction was to grab a piece of wood and start carving a crib, while Emma smiled with emotion, watching him transform his love into something tangible. They spent their evenings discussing names, imagining the baby's nursery, and dreaming of the future that awaited them. The gratitude for this new chapter was palpable. Emma felt that life was finally conspiring in her favor. As they prepared for their new arrival, life continued its cozy rhythm. Emma worked during the day and read stories to Liam at night while he sanded wood or planned his next piece of furniture. The sound of pencil on paper, their shared laughter, and the clink of Liam's tools formed the soundtrack of their days. A constant sense of renewal filled their lives, as if each moment together was another opportunity to build something greater. The love that enveloped their home was impossible not to admire. Despite their simple routine, Emma and Liam cultivated small rituals that made everything special. Every Sunday, they walked to the flower-filled fields on the outskirts of town, discussing their dreams while picking flowers to decorate their home. These flowers were not just decoration, they were a reminder that even the simplest things could bring joy. Emma often felt a deep connection to nature and the books she read, reflecting on how life always offers moments of beauty, even in the smallest details. At school, Emma was more than just a teacher. She was an inspiration to her students. Upon hearing about her pregnancy, they banded together to gift her a journal to record her baby's first moments. This gesture deeply moved Emma, reaffirming how much she was loved and admired in the community. With Liam's support and the energy she received from her students, Emma felt invincible, as if nothing could shake the happiness they had built together. While Liam worked tirelessly to expand his business, Emma devoted herself to keeping their home and hearts in harmony. There was a room in their house that Liam called the dream space, where he stored sketches of furniture and where the crib was taking shape. This room would become the baby's nursery, and they loved spending time there, imagining the future. Even in mundane tasks, there was a sense of purpose that bound them together in an unbreakable way. Millstone was a small town where everyone knew everyone, offering a comforting sense of security. Emma and Liam were often seen at the local market or Margaret's bookstore, buying home essentials or finding inspiration. Their routine was tranquil yet filled with small acts of love that demonstrated the depth of their bond. The town embraced them like an extended family, making it all the harder to imagine anything disrupting their peace. One night, while gazing at the stars in their backyard, Liam promised Emma he would always take care of her and their baby, no matter what. He said that the gratitude he felt for having Emma in his life was what inspired him to dream bigger. Emma believed every word, feeling that this was where they had always belonged. With a baby on the way, their renewed silent vows and the promise of a bright future filled them with hope. The pregnancy brought friends and neighbors even closer to them. The constant visits, simple gifts, and heartfelt wishes reinforced how beloved Emma and Liam were. Yet, amidst the smiles and embraces, Emma occasionally felt a twinge of concern about Liam's ambitious plans. His determination to expand his carpentry business demanded efforts that sometimes seemed to overwhelm him. Even on the calmest days, Emma knew life had its ups and downs. But as she looked at the unfinished crib and the lists of baby names scattered across the kitchen table, she was certain of one thing: Her love for Liam and the baby growing inside her was greater than any obstacle. The future seemed like a blank canvas, ready to be painted with colors they would choose together. Yet, as life often does, that canvas was about to be stained in unexpected ways. Emma and Liam's life, so full of gratitude and shared dreams, crumbled one seemingly ordinary afternoon. Liam left to deliver furniture to a neighboring town, promising to return by dinner. But night fell, and he didn't come home. Emma's initial unease quickly turned to panic as she realized something was wrong. Days passed without any news, and then came the devastating blow. The police found Liam's car abandoned near a river. It felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. The news was a shock to the entire town. Millstone, with its tranquil atmosphere, was now filled with whispers and unanswered questions. Emma, heartbroken, refused to accept the worst. But the fruitless searches and the absence of any concrete leads made it clear that Liam wasn't coming back. The void he left was crushing, but the worst was yet to come. The love she once knew seemed like a distant memory, swallowed by uncertainty and despair. As she grappled with her grief, Emma began receiving visits that brought a new kind of torment. Unknown creditors knocked on her door, demanding payment for debts Liam had never mentioned. The threats were as frightening as the words she heard. Liam had been involved in risky business ventures, far from the image of the honest, ambitious man she thought she knew. Each revelation tore away more pieces of the life they had built together, leaving Emma adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Emma tried to cling to her job as a teacher, but even that source of normalcy seemed to slip through her fingers. With a baby on the way and debts piling up on the kitchen table, sleepless nights became an unattainable luxury. Memories of Liam, once a comfort, began to turn into a source of pain. The man she loved and trusted had left behind a trail of destruction. Each threat she received made her question, how much of the truth about Liam had she ever really known? The pregnancy, once a reason for joy, now felt like a heavy burden to bear. Emma spent hours thinking about the future, trying to find a way to protect the child growing inside her. As suffocating as the debts and threats were, the desire to create a safe environment for her baby gave her a flicker of determination. The love she felt for her child was the only thing keeping her sanity intact amid the chaos. The support of neighbors was crucial in the early days, but Emma knew she couldn't rely on them forever. She needed a plan, a way out, something that would allow her not only to survive but to start over. The memory of Liam, now shadowed by darker hues, still hung over her days like a storm cloud. But Emma began to understand that if she wanted to overcome the crisis, she would have to face reality head-on, no matter how painful it was. The creditors showed no sign of relenting. Every knock at the door made Emma's heart race. Every phone call made her hold her breath. The constant fear turned her house, once a home filled with love, into a place of anguish. Yet even when it seemed there was no way out, Emma found the strength to keep going, knowing there had to be life beyond all this suffering, even if she couldn't see it yet. Amid the tough days, Emma found brief moments of peace imagining her baby's face. It was as if the thought of holding that little being in her arms gave her a spark of hope. Still, the unanswered questions about Liam's disappearance and the mounting pressure of the debts weighed on her like a crushing burden. Each step forward felt like being dragged back into a bottomless abyss. Emma's love for Liam began to mix with anger that he had left her in this situation, that he hadn't trusted her enough to share his problems, and most of all, that he had left their child without a father before even being born. This mix of conflicting emotions was a daily internal battle. And although she didn't yet realize it, that anger would become one of the flames driving her forward. With the baby's arrival imminent, Emma knew her life would never be the same. The memories of Liam, the debts, the threats, all were part of a story she had never chosen but now had to confront. Her love for her child and her determination to protect them began to transform into an inner strength she never knew she possessed. It was the start of something new, even though the path ahead remained shrouded in uncertainty and danger. In the days following Liam's disappearance, Emma was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, oscillating between grief, anger, and sheer exhaustion. Each knock at the door made her heart race, hoping for answers, or maybe, just maybe, for Liam to appear, wearing a guilty smile and offering a convincing explanation. But the visits from creditors and their relentless demands extinguished any spark of hope. The optimistic, life-loving Emma began to crumble, trapped in a reality that felt both unjust and unbearable. Her growing belly was a constant reminder that time waited for no one. But instead of being inspired by motherhood, Emma felt paralyzed by fear. How could she raise a child alone? How could she protect the fragile life growing inside her when she could barely protect herself? It was as if the world had lost its color, and even the books that once brought her comfort now seemed empty, incapable of filling the void inside her. Time and again, Emma found herself staring at the bed she once shared with Liam, reliving memories that made her question everything she thought she knew about him. The nights he held her, promising everything would be okay, now felt like lies. Doubt gnawed at her mind. Had she ever truly known the man she chose to spend her life with? This uncertainty made her want to give up, to let the weight of reality crush her entirely, because fighting back felt impossible. Some days, Emma could barely get out of bed. Bills piled up in messy stacks on the kitchen table, while the house, once a sanctuary of love, now felt like a battlefield. The creditor's pressure was relentless, and the feeling of having no escape was suffocating. Even her pregnancy, which once brought so much joy, now felt like a burden. Emma cried alone, clutching the pillow that still carried Liam's scent, wishing she could disappear along with him. Friends and neighbors tried to help, but nothing seemed enough to pull her out of her emotional abyss. Emma felt that no one truly understood what she was going through or the magnitude of the pain she carried. Words of comfort were like distant echoes, unable to penetrate the wall of isolation she had built around herself. Each attempt at help only made her retreat further, as if her suffering was something she had to endure alone. Looking at the unfinished crib in the dream space, Emma felt a sharp pang of grief, as if every nail Liam hadn't hammered echoed in her soul. It wasn't just his absence, it was the absence of the future they had envisioned together. Sometimes she wished it were all a nightmare she could wake up from. But reality reminded her, day after day, that Liam wasn't coming back and she would have to find a way to move forward. Yet, in that moment, moving forward felt utterly impossible. Amid tears and sleepless nights, Emma began to doubt her ability to overcome the challenges she faced. The shadow of debt, the constant fear, and the void left by Liam became daily companions, draining her energy and willpower. Even the moments when she felt her baby move inside her, a sensation that should have brought comfort, became a cruel reminder that she was alone on this journey. Emma didn't know how to cope with such crushing loneliness. As time passed, her refusal to accept her new reality became clear. Emma was trapped in the past, desperately clinging to memories of a life that no longer existed. Each attempt to look to the future was thwarted by the weight of the present pulling her back. She felt incapable of planning, dreaming, or believing there was anything beyond her suffering. Despair consumed her, as though escaping the spiral she had fallen into was impossible. Even the smallest daily tasks felt like insurmountable mountains. Going to the market, cooking a meal, or grading her students' assignments seemed to demand a strength Emma no longer had. When she looked to the future, all she saw was uncertainty. What had once been renewal and hope was now only darkness. Emma felt like a character in an unfinished book, unsure of how her story would continue. Yet, even on her darkest days, a small flame inside Emma refused to be extinguished. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a quiet voice that told her she couldn't give up. Something had to change. Something would change. But for that to happen, Emma needed to find a new source of strength, one she never imagined would come from an unexpected place. Emma was on the verge of collapse when Margaret appeared. The owner of the local bookstore was a peculiar figure in Millstone, reserved but always observant, with a gaze that seemed to see beyond appearances. Emma, consumed by grief and exhaustion, barely noticed when Margaret began visiting her regularly, bringing tea and books. These weren't just books. They were stories handpicked to resonate with Emma's pain and gradually rekindle her passion for literature. Margaret understood that Emma needed more than comfort, she needed purpose. One afternoon, as Emma organized some school papers, Margaret arrived with a bag filled with old literary classics. She placed them on the table without a word and started making tea. Each of these books holds a story of overcoming. Emma, she said, her voice firm yet gentle. Life can be terrible sometimes, but just like in books, you can turn the page. Emma, who hadn't cried in front of anyone in a long time, felt tears stream down her face as those words sank in. Margaret wasn't just a confidant, she was a guide. Gradually, their conversations shifted from the past to the future. You have a strength you don't even realize yet, Emma, she'd say, handing her a new book with every visit. Margaret also helped Emma come up with practical ideas to earn extra income, suggesting she start tutoring the town's teenagers. It was as if Margaret knew exactly what Emma needed to hear at any given moment. With Margaret's help, Emma began to reorganize her home, both physically and emotionally. They spent afternoons cleaning and redecorating the space once called the dream room. Margaret insisted it was important to create an environment that reflected the renewal Emma desired in her life. You're building a new beginning, Emma. Not just for yourself but for your child, Margaret said as she hung light curtains on the windows. The room, once a painful reminder of the past, began to transform into a symbol of hope. Margaret's support went beyond words. She was practical, arriving with to-do lists and ideas to ease Emma's burdens. One day, she suggested Emma organize a literary event at the school, something to bring the community together and allow her to share her passion for literature. At first, Emma hesitated, but Margaret's enthusiasm was infectious. "Trust me, this will help you feel alive again," Margaret assured her with a warm smile. Emma began to see Margaret not just as a wise woman but as an inspiration. Whenever Emma felt like giving up, Margaret was there with her calm presence and stories of resilience. "I've lost a lot too, Emma," Margaret confided one day. "But it's amazing what we discover about ourselves when we're forced to start over." Those words stayed with Emma, a reminder that she wasn't alone in her pain. As weeks passed, Emma noticed small changes within herself. She began grading her students' assignments with more enthusiasm and walked through Millstone streets with renewed energy. Margaret encouraged her to view the future as a blank page, ready to be filled with new stories. For the first time in months, Emma felt something akin to inspiration, a desire to create, teach, and live. Margaret also brought a new perspective on Liam. She didn't judge or make assumptions but encouraged Emma to focus on what she could control, her present and her future. "The answers will come in time, Emma. For now, focus on yourself and your baby. He needs a strong mother, and you're stronger than you think." Margaret's words didn't erase the pain but gave Emma a new lens through which to see her life. On the day Emma hosted her first literary event, the feeling of renewal was tangible. Seeing the happy faces of students and townspeople participating in something she had created was a powerful reminder that there was still beauty in life. Margaret, as always, was nearby, offering support and smiling with pride. That day marked the beginning of a new chapter, even if Emma didn't yet have all the answers. Although the road ahead was still uncertain, Emma knew something within her had shifted. Margaret hadn't just helped lighten the load of her struggles. She had shown Emma that life existed beyond the pain. Emma was ready to face whatever came next, knowing she now had a newfound strength, the certainty that she could start over no matter how hard it seemed. The idea of offering tutoring sessions sparked a glimmer of hope, but putting it into practice challenged Emma's own insecurities. Organizing schedules, dealing with parents, and, above all, regaining a sense of competence after months of grief felt like a monumental task. Yet, with Margaret's encouragement, Emma began spreading the word in the community. At first, she had only 2 students, but soon the number grew. Millstone needed a good teacher, and Emma was exactly that, even if she didn't fully believe it yet. As Emma rebuilt her routine, her home transformed into a space of learning. The once empty living room now buzzed with notebooks, pencils, and the timid laughter of young students. Teaching reignited a part of Emma she thought she'd lost. Each lesson she prepared felt like a small victory, a reminder that she still had something valuable to give. In every grateful glance from her students, Emma began to sense there might be a path back to life. The journey, however, was far from easy. Bills continued to arrive, creditors still loomed, and fear was a constant shadow. There were nights when Emma felt like giving up again, but something within her, Perhaps the promise she made to the baby growing inside her kept her moving forward. Margaret remained her steadfast supporter, always reminding her that every small step was progress. "Never underestimate the power of small victories," Margaret would say with an encouraging smile. Emma also started organizing small literary events at the local school. The idea was daunting at first, but Margaret stood by her side, helping plan and motivating her to keep going. The first event, a poetry reading night, drew a larger crowd than Emma had anticipated. Seeing the community come together to celebrate something she had created filled her heart with a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time in a long time, she felt part of something bigger, contributing meaningfully to the world around her. Among her students and the events she organized, Emma found unexpected allies. Parents began offering help, whether by bringing supplies or assisting in maintaining the space where the lessons were held. Even neighbors who had previously been mere spectators to her struggles began to get involved. One helped repair her roof, while another provided firewood for the winter. These small gestures brought a sense of community that Emma hadn't felt since Liam disappeared. Yet, the creditors remained a constant threat, a reminder that her fight was far from over. They didn't just demand payment, they did so aggressively, leaving threatening notes on her door and occasionally showing up unannounced. Margaret urged Emma to document every interaction in case she needed evidence later. "Don't let them intimidate you. You're stronger than they are," Margaret said, radiating a confidence Emma tried to absorb. As the months passed, the baby was born on a cold winter's day. Emma named him Ben, a name she and Liam had chosen before their world fell apart. Holding Ben in her arms brought a whirlwind of emotions, joy, sorrow, gratitude, and renewal all at once. He was the reason Emma had found the strength to keep going, and now, more than ever, she knew she needed to create a safe world for him. Every night spent rocking Ben was a reminder that her love for him was stronger than any fear. With Ben's arrival, Emma felt something shift within her. Motherhood awakened a fierce determination, a certainty that she would fight with everything she had to protect him. The creditors' threats still loomed, but Emma began to see that her community stood firmly by her side. More than ever, she felt she wasn't alone. Margaret, the parents of her students, and even once distant neighbors had become her support network. Each day was a battle, but also an opportunity to build something new. Emma started to realize that, while the past was painful, it didn't have to define her future. The lessons continued, the literary events gained momentum, and Ben grew up surrounded by love and care. But deep down, Emma knew there were unanswered questions and secrets from the past that needed to surface. And while she was learning to live again, a part of her understood that this chapter of her life wasn't yet closed. The months following Ben's birth were a test of endurance for Emma. Between sleepless nights and physical exhaustion, she still had to deal with creditors who seemed to intensify their pressure every day. Emma was determined to keep her home and protect her son, but the threats grew more direct. One day, she found a note pinned to her door with words that chilled her. "Pay up, or you'll pay another way." Emma knew she couldn't ignore this anymore. She needed allies. Margaret remained a constant presence, but this time, she wasn't just helping Emma alone. Margaret rallied the people of Millstone, calling a meeting at her bookstore. "Emma has given so much to this community, now it's our turn to give back," she declared firmly. The meeting resulted in a support network Emma never imagined she had. Parents, neighbors, and even strangers came together to help care for Ben, organize the literary events, and most importantly, provide protection. Even with allies, Emma faced daily challenges. Balancing Ben's care, tutoring, and organizing school events was exhausting. There were moments when she felt she couldn't handle it all. One evening, while grading papers by candlelight, fatigue overcame her, and she fell asleep at her desk. Margaret arrived the next morning, picked up Ben, and made breakfast. "You don't have to do this alone," Margaret said as Emma cried tears of relief. Emma's enemies weren't just the creditors. They were also the shadows of her own past, memories of Liam and the unanswered questions that still haunted her. Sometimes she wondered if she was naive to believe she could start over. But every time she looked at Ben, she felt a renewed strength. He was her anchor, her reason to keep going. Each smile he gave her was a reminder that, despite everything, beauty still existed in life. The creditors, however, escalated their tactics. One day, while Emma was at school, a man showed up at her house, frightening Margaret, who was looking after Ben. When Emma found out, her anger outweighed her fear. She decided she couldn't live under constant threats anymore. With Margaret's help, she sought legal advice to understand her rights and began documenting every interaction with the creditors. It was a small step, but a crucial one. As Emma fought these external battles, she began to realize how strong her community truly was. One of the students' mothers, a lawyer, offered to help with legal matters. A neighbor brought wood so Emma could finally finish the crib Liam had started. With every act of kindness, Emma felt her struggle was no longer solitary. Even amid chaos, there were signs of hope. The literary events became a refuge, not just for Emma but for the entire community. Each reading and story shared made Emma feel like she was rebuilding her life while strengthening Millstone's bonds. There was something magical about seeing people come together to celebrate literature, something Emma knew was more powerful than any threat. In these moments, she found the strength to keep going. Although the challenges were relentless, Emma began to notice she was changing. The things that once seemed unbearable were now obstacles she could face. This didn't mean the fear was gone, but she was learning to live with it without letting it control her. Margaret often said that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Emma finally understood what that meant. Still, the days were marked by uncertainty. Liam's absence remained an invisible weight, a gap Emma couldn't fill. She tried to convince herself it was better to move on without answers, but deep down, she knew this story wasn't over. And as she built a future for herself and Ben, the questions about the past lingered, waiting for the right moment to surface. Emma knew her fight wasn't over, but something inside her had changed. Every challenge she faced, every enemy she confronted, made her stronger. And though the path ahead was still fraught with obstacles, she was determined to keep moving forward. Deep down, she knew she was on the verge of something that would change everything. 6 years had passed since Liam's disappearance, yet his absence was still a constant echo in Emma's life. Ben, now 6, was the joy of her home and an endless source of inspiration. But lonely nights were still filled with unanswered questions and moments where Emma stared into the void, trying to understand how Liam could have left her in this situation. It was a wound that healed slowly but never completely. Emma had become a central figure in Millstone. Her literary events were now a tradition, and her courage in the face of hardship was admired by everyone. She had managed to pay off much of her debt and create a safe environment for Ben, but the scars of what she had endured remained. When she was invited to a charity event in a neighboring city, she decided it was a good opportunity to expand her literary projects. Ben, excited for the trip, was the encouragement Emma needed to step out of her comfort zone. The event, held in a luxurious hall, was filled with people Emma never imagined she'd meet. Business people, politicians, and philanthropists mingled in the space, and Emma, with her characteristic humility, felt out of place for a moment. However, her determination to represent Millstone and seek support for rural education kept her grounded. She held Ben's hand tightly, reminding herself of why she was there. This wasn't just an event, it was a chance to build something greater. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened next. As she watched the stage, Emma saw something, or someone, that made her heart stop. There, amid camera flashes and applause, stood Liam. Alive. He looked both familiar and like a complete stranger. Dressed in an elegant suit, standing beside a stunning woman, he smiled as though he'd never known a moment of hardship. Emma felt her legs weaken, and for a moment, the world around her disappeared. The shock was overwhelming. Emma held Ben tighter, fearing he might sense something. She tried to process what she was seeing, but her mind struggled to keep up with the whirlwind of emotions: anger, confusion, sadness. Liam was there, not as the man she had known, but as someone entirely different, being celebrated as a successful businessman and philanthropist. It was as if the puzzle pieces of her past were suddenly before her, yet none of them fit. Emma wanted to run, to flee from this nightmare that felt crueler than anything she had imagined. But something inside her stopped her. It wasn't just the need for answers, it was the need for justice, to confront the man who had abandoned her and destroyed so many years of her life. A surge of strength rose in her chest, something she hadn't realized she possessed. For the first time, Emma knew she was no longer willing to let the past dictate her future. As the event went on, Emma kept her distance, watching Liam's every move. He seemed at ease in this new life, as if the past had never existed. But Emma knew the truth. She knew what he had left behind and how much she had sacrificed to rebuild her life. A cold resolve filled her as she planned her next steps. This wasn't a coincidence. Fate had brought Liam back into her life, and Emma couldn't ignore it. When the event ended, Emma saw her chance. With her heart racing, she asked one of the organizers to take her backstage. Ben, tired from the long night, was distracted by a book Emma had brought to keep him calm. She left him with Margaret, who had also attended the event, and made her way toward the stage. Every step felt like it weighed a ton, but Emma's determination outweighed her fear. She knew that crossing that threshold would change her life forever. The reunion with Liam wasn't just about getting answers, it was about finally confronting the ghosts that had haunted her for so long. As she pushed the door open, Emma knew she was stepping into uncharted territory, a dark cave where the most painful truths awaited. Yet, she also knew she wasn't alone in this journey. She had Ben, Margaret, and an inner strength that would guide her, no matter what she faced on the other side. The air backstage was heavy, filled with murmurs and hurried footsteps. Emma stopped in front of the door separating her from Liam. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared he might hear it before she even entered. For a moment, she considered retreating, thinking about everything at stake. But then she remembered the years of suffering, the sleepless nights, and the times she had nearly lost hope. Something inside her screamed for justice. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. Liam stood there, adjusting his jacket in front of a mirror. When he saw Emma, his face froze in a mix of shock and guilt. It was as if the past had caught up to him, demanding payment for a debt he thought was buried. Emma? He barely managed to utter her name. She, however, stood firm despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. There was so much she wanted to say, but for a moment, all she could do was stare at him. The silence was heavier than any shout. "You're alive?" Emma's words were a blend of anger and disbelief. Liam tried to speak, but she raised her hand to stop him. "Oh, it's my turn to talk." And then the floodgates opened. She told him about the years she had spent believing he was dead, about the debts, the threats, and the burden of raising Ben alone. With every word, Liam seemed to shrink, as though each accusation was a blow. "You left me. You left us. And for what? To hide behind a new identity while we faced hell?" Liam tried to defend himself, but his excuses only fueled Emma's fury. He explained that he had faked his death to escape his debts, believing it was the only way to protect Emma and the baby. "I thought you'd be better off without me," he said, his voice trembling. But to Emma, it was nothing more than a coward's excuse. "Better off without you? I fought every day to survive. You didn't save anyone, Liam. You only saved yourself." The tension in the air was palpable. Liam tried to explain that he never wanted to hurt Emma, that he thought disappearing was the right thing to do. But her anger was not so easily soothed. "You destroyed our family. You took away the life we planned together." Each word was laced with the pain she had suppressed for years. Seeing Liam now, so far removed from the man she once loved, was like reopening a wound that had never truly healed. When Liam asked about Ben, Emma couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, now you care about your son? Where were you when he was born? When he got sick, took his first steps, said his first word?" Her voice dripped with indignation. "You have no right to ask about him. He grew up without you, and trust me, he's better off that way." Liam seemed ready to argue, but Emma cut him off again. "You chose this, Liam. You chose to abandon us." As much as Emma wanted to unleash all her anger, she knew she needed to stay composed. This wasn't just an emotional outburst, it was a reckoning. "I didn't come here to hear your excuses, Liam. I came to make sure you understand what you've done. And to let you know you're going to pay for it." Liam tried to protest, but Emma was done listening. His actions spoke louder than any words he could offer. Leaving the room, Emma felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. The tears that followed were different from those she had cried in the past years. They weren't tears of sadness, but of liberation. Confronting Liam didn't erase the past, but it gave Emma something she hadn't felt in a long time: control over her own story. Yet she knew this wasn't the end of the chapter. There was more to do, and she was ready to fight. In the days that followed, Emma began piecing together a plan. Confronting Liam was the first step, but now it was time to ensure he faced the consequences of his actions. With Margaret and her other allies, Emma started gathering evidence and building a case against him. Every document, every detail that surfaced confirmed she was on the right path. The ordeal wasn't over, but Emma was no longer the woman Liam had abandoned. She was stronger, more determined, and prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days after the confrontation were intense. Emma threw herself into the task of collecting evidence against Liam. With Margaret's help and Millstone's support, every piece of the puzzle began to fall into place. Old contracts, financial records, and even testimonies from people Liam had deceived emerged, forming a trail of truths he had tried to bury. Emma felt her resolve grow stronger. This wasn't just about justice for her and Ben, but for everyone hurt by Liam's actions. Margaret, always by Emma's side, used her connections to introduce Emma to a lawyer from the neighboring city, a woman with an impeccable reputation and experience handling cases like Liam's. "You're stronger than you think, Emma," Margaret said as she watched her hesitate before the meeting. With papers in hand and her heart racing, Emma knew she was taking another step in the right direction. Finally, it felt as though the tide was turning in her favor. As the case took shape, Liam attempted to contact Emma, but she didn't listen. Her only response was a direct warning: "See you in court." Ben, shielded from the chaos surrounding them, remained her greatest source of motivation. Every laugh, every curious glance reminded her why she was fighting. Though Ben could sense something was happening, Emma made it a priority to ensure he felt safe and loved, no matter the turbulence around them. When the day of the trial arrived, Emma felt a mix of anxiety and relief. The courtroom was packed, with Millstone residents showing up to support Emma, a testament to how loved and respected she was. On the other side, Liam looked like a shadow of the confident man she had encountered at the charity event. He tried to maintain composure, but the stares of the community and the weight of the evidence against him revealed that his facade had crumbled. For the first time, Emma saw him truly vulnerable. The trial was long, but Emma remained steadfast. Listening to the accounts of other victims, her initial anger transformed into something deeper, a sense of responsibility. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for everyone who had suffered because of Liam. When the verdict was announced, guilty of fraud and evasion of debts, a heavy weight lifted from her shoulders. The room erupted in murmurs and sighs of relief. Emma didn't celebrate outwardly, but inside, she felt a victory that went beyond herself. The reward wasn't just Liam's conviction, it was the emotional and financial freedom Emma had earned. With the case closed, she could finally return to Millstone and focus on what truly mattered: the future. Ben, still too young to grasp the magnitude of what had happened, ran to hug her as she walked through the door. In that moment, Emma realized that her real triumph wasn't in the courtroom papers but in the life she was building for herself and her son. Millstone celebrated Emma's victory as if it were their own. Her literary events grew even larger, attracting people from neighboring towns who had heard her story. Emma began using her experience to inspire others, sharing how she had transformed pain into strength and adversity into renewal. Each person who heard her story felt the impact of her resilience, seeing in her a living example of overcoming life's hardest challenges. While Emma knew the scars of the past would never fully fade, she also understood that they told a story of strength. The freedom she felt now was something she would never again take for granted. Emma had plans, not just for herself and Ben, but for the entire community. Educational projects, literacy programs, and literary events were only the beginning. For the first time in years, she saw the future as a blank page, ready to be written with new stories. Closing the chapter with Liam felt like a rebirth. Emma was no longer the scared, broken woman from years ago. She was someone who had faced the impossible and emerged stronger than she ever thought possible. And as she watched Ben playing in the garden, she knew everything she had endured had brought her to this moment, a place where love, gratitude, and renewal had finally found a home. With Liam held accountable and the case closed, Emma returned to Millstone with a fresh outlook on life. The relief was palpable, as though a dense fog had lifted, revealing a clear path ahead for the first time in years. The house, once a painful reminder of broken promises, was now a warm refuge, filled with laughter and small acts of love. Ben ran through the yard, exploring every corner with the boundless curiosity of a child, while Emma experienced a peace she hadn't felt in ages. Emma quickly resumed her routines but with a renewed spirit. Tutoring sessions and literary events continued, but now she approached them with more confidence, ready to expand her ideas. The Millstone community, which had been a crucial support during her darkest times, now celebrated her determination and courage. More than ever, Emma was seen as an inspiration, someone who had turned adversity into strength and used that strength to build something greater. Walking through the town, Emma was often stopped by neighbors and friends who offered words of encouragement or sought her advice. She made it a point to listen to everyone's stories, knowing that each person carried their own battles. Margaret, always by her side, now looked at Emma with a proud gleam in her eye. "You're living proof that starting over is possible," she said one afternoon as they prepared tea and planned new projects for the local school. Ben began attending school and quickly became the center of attention with his infectious smile and endless energy. He was a reflection of Emma's strength, and every milestone he reached felt like a shared victory. On weekends, the two explored the fields around Millstone, picking flowers and inventing stories that Ben loved to share with his friends. These simple moments became the essence of Emma's happiness, as she cherished every second spent with her son. However, the transition to a peaceful life wasn't without its challenges. Emma still had days when memories of the past weighed heavily on her. Instead of avoiding them, she began facing them as part of her story. She learned to distinguish between the pain she needed to carry and the pain she could leave behind. These reflections helped her find emotional balance, allowing her to be kind to herself as she moved forward. Emma also dedicated more time to projects that benefited the community. She organized an adult literacy program, inspired by stories Margaret had shared about residents who never had the chance to learn to read. Each new initiative felt like a brick in the foundation of something lasting, a way to give back the support she had received during her darkest moments. For Emma, helping others was a way to nourish her soul and give meaning to her experiences. The house, once silent and lonely, now buzzed with laughter, conversations, and frequent visits from friends. Emma began redecorating the space, adding personal touches to every corner. The walls displayed Ben's drawings and inspirational quotes she found in her beloved books. It felt as though the house, like Emma, had undergone its own transformation, becoming a reflection of the home she had built within herself. As the months passed, Emma realized her heart was slowly opening to new possibilities. The love she felt for Ben was enough, but she didn't rule out the idea of one day sharing her life with someone again. There was no rush, just the certainty that she now understood her worth and what she deserved. This newfound confidence was something no one could take away from her. Emma's connection to Millstone also deepened. She saw the town as a place of healing, where people cared for one another and time seemed to flow differently. It was more than a place to live. It was a community that shared its victories and struggles. Emma knew it was her home, a safe haven where she and Ben could continue to grow and thrive. The journey back wasn't just physical but also emotional and spiritual. Emma was no longer the woman who had started this journey. She had transformed into someone stronger, wiser, and more aware of her ability to face whatever life might throw her way. With every step she took, she walked with the certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Emma felt as though she had emerged from a long, dark tunnel, and the light surrounding her now wasn't just the absence of pain, it was a complete renewal of herself. Even with her newfound strength, there were moments when the past tried to creep in and steal her peace. The years of struggle had left marks, both inside and out, but Emma learned to see them as symbols of survival. They were like scars on a map, reminding her of the places she had traveled and the battles she had won. One morning, as she watched Ben playing in the yard, Emma felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude that made her pause. That child was her anchor but also her greatest inspiration. Everything Emma had done, everything she had endured, was for him. Now, seeing him grow surrounded by love, she knew every effort had been worth it. It was an emotional resurrection, a reminder that even after chaos, something beautiful can bloom. With the royalties from her book, Emma was able to invest in a lifelong dream, creating a community library in Millstone. The library wasn't just a place for books, it became a hub for gatherings, learning, and sharing stories. Every shelf filled, every child who walked in with eyes wide with curiosity, was a reminder of how far Emma had come and how worthwhile her journey had been. The library became the beating heart of the town, a symbol of hope and resilience. However, the true treasure Emma carried wasn't only visible in the projects she realized. It was also reflected in how she chose to live. Emma had learned to cherish the small moments, the games with Ben in the yard, quiet coffees with Margaret, and afternoons spent reading on the porch. These simple, everyday experiences were where she found genuine happiness. It wasn't what she owned but how she embraced life that made all the difference. Ben, now 7, was a lively and intelligent child. Surrounded by books and stories, he inherited Emma's love of literature. His boundless curiosity delighted her, as he explored the world with the eyes of someone who knew life always held new wonders to uncover. Every milestone he reached, no matter how small, was a shared victory, a reminder that Emma had discovered her deepest strength in motherhood. The past, though still present in memories and scars, was no longer a burden for Emma. She had learned to see Liam not as a shadow, but as a lesson. He was part of the story that shaped her, but no longer the author of her choices. When she thought of him now, she felt a mix of acceptance and compassion, without any desire for reconciliation. Emma had found peace within herself, and that was more than enough. Millstone, too, was transformed by Emma's journey. The community rallied around her, and her initiatives left a lasting impact. The literary events, literacy programs, and the library marked the beginning of a new chapter for the town. Emma often said that what she built wasn't solely her achievement, it was the result of the support from everyone who believed in her. Her story became an inspiration not just for Millstone, but for people from other towns who visited seeking motivation. On the final page of her book, Emma wrote a sentence that captured her journey. "Gratitude is the root of strength, inspiration is the stem, and renewal is the flower. Cultivate them, and you will see your garden bloom, even after the fiercest storms." These words echoed in her daily life, a constant reminder of all she had overcome and how much more she had yet to experience. At the end of each day, Emma would sit on the swing in her yard, Ben by her side, watching the sunset. These quiet, simple moments were the ones she cherished most. They symbolized the treasure she had brought back from her journey, the ability to transform pain into love, struggle into growth, and hardship into a legacy of strength and hope. Emma's journey had come to an end, but her new life was only beginning.